Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video, and today we are looking at a WE knife, and it is a huge winner from WE. I'm drawn to the slightly simpler, less extravagant knives, and this certainly, fits that description, right? It is just a fairly straightforward design with slabs of titanium, frame lock. Nothing crazy going on here. Nothing, by the way, has everything that you would expect from a high-end frame lock, but otherwise it's kind of a little plain Jane. And frankly, I think that's great. I think WE really, really shines on these. Now, I do want to say one thing that does stand out to me. Look at the stonewash that WE does. That blue and the bronze stonewash, both of these look absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I just think that it adds depth and interest to, a fairly standard knife. All right. So let me give you a rundown on the features and functions of this. We'll do some comparisons, and then I'll give you some overall conclusions, having been able to spend a bit of time with this. If you've already seen my first impressions, you know how big this is, but essentially it's a pretty standard size knife. So, around 8 inches overall, 3.5-inch blade, I'm not going to rehash all of that because you all have Google and you can look that up, or you've probably already seen my first impressions. So this knife, in the things that I do want to touch on are the things that you can only learn over spending a little bit of time with your knife. All right. So this blade is a little bit thick behind the edge, but the overall blade stock and the grind of this works really well. I find this to be a nicely balanced knife. All right. It's not as screaming crazy thin as some of the knives that we're going to get out there. There's like the Civivi Backlash, for example, is, this nice hollow grind, ridiculous. It's not as thin as some of those, but that does add a degree of confidence that, hey, I can be pretty certain that this is not going to be a blade that gives me any problems. Very high flat grind, nice little swedge on top. And of course, my one complaint, and I feel like a broken record here because I say this whenever I see it, bead blasted finish. It's okay on this knife. This knife is not super flashy, but even a very plain blade, I still think looks a lot nicer with a satin or even a stonewash finish on it than with a bead blast. And then we've got this great fuller, and the fuller is going to not only be a really good looking design element, but allow me to Spidey flick this knife very, very effectively. Since we're kind of transitioning anyway, let's just make that point. Oh, the steel is 20 CV on this. I should have mentioned that from the start. I did mention it in my first impressions. So, and probably again, most of you who are watching this knife's been around for a while, so you probably know that already. Very, very satisfying Spidey flick on this knife. There's a nice big sharpening choil, but it's a little small to use as a finger choil. All right. The action or the bearings are, of course, we're talking about a Civivi, so these are going to be captured ceramic bearings. We do have the hardened steel lock bar insert and over travel stop. So all the stuff that we're used to seeing on a high-end titanium frame lock. And the lock bar is really comfortable. Look at that. Such a satisfying action, guys. Really, really enjoyable to deploy this knife. And it's one of those knives, if you're one of those fidgety guys, you're going to fidget with this a whole lot. All right. So the action is good. The lockup is solid. The access to that lock bar is really, really nice. We've got no movement of any kind in any direction, just as we would hope. All right. The handle itself is a fairly plain handle. There's no milling internally to cut the weight, but it's not a heavy knife anyway, so that doesn't really matter. It feels good in hand. It's got definitely enough real estate. Now, I wouldn't want to, I would still consider this sort of an EDC style knife. I wouldn't call this hard use or tactical or anything like that. And for an EDC type of knife, the handle is great. Okay. I don't need this to have a super girthy, super hand-filling handle on it. It would be nicer if it did, but there are lots of other WE knives, and we'll bring one in for comparison in a minute that does have that really girthy, hand-filling shape to it. But in this case, it works. It feels just fine. All right, standoff construction, deep carry clip, which is reversible to left or right side carry. Obviously, the lock is going to be stuck on that side, so lefties, it's not going to work perfectly, but it'll probably be fine. All right, the only place we could complain here is the fact that this is not flush fitted into or recessed into the handle. I feel like that's a pretty easy thing to do. And even though this is, a little more of a budget-friendly Wii knife, it would have been nice to see that. Okay, so we've kind of covered all the features. I've talked about these are all things that I've kind of noticed over a few weeks of getting to use this and carry it and spend some time with it. Let me grab a few comparisons, and we'll look at some knives that, one, might be competitive options, and two, might offer some feature or functionality that you would prefer over what this guy is doing. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and get some comparisons here, beginning with the standard titanium frame lock. This, of course, is the Chris Reeve Knives Inkosi. I'll throw another knife that has become sort of a classic for me. This is the Tactile Turn Maverick, which I absolutely love. Both of these share in common with this, just, they're plain, straightforward cutting tools. They're not trying to be too crazy, but it's in their simplicity that they find, a real appeal. And so I kind of class the Beacon in a similar genre as the Inkosi and the Maverick. I mentioned that I would throw in a knife that does have a big, hand-filling, comfortable handle, and this, of course, is the Wii Curvaceous. Now, I do have a similar complaint about the blade. Again, I wish this blade was not bead blasted, okay? But it still looks really good, and this is a handle that, yeah, if you really had to get a lot of work done, if you were going to do some serious cutting tasks, this would really get the job done for you. Absolutely phenomenal feel in hand. It really, when you grab this handle, it grabs you back. Absolutely great. Okay, I won't put that in. I mean, frankly, I don't think a lot of people that are buying this are also interested in this. Like, these are diametrically opposed to one another, but worth throwing in there just because, since it has that big crazy handle. Let's throw in the Cold Steel Code 4 just because everyone's familiar with it. It also represents a really nice option if you need something sort of dressy or classy that can still really get some crazy work done. All right, and lastly, Paramilitary 2, which is such an iconic knife that everyone knows what this is and about what size it is. So it gives you, I think, I try to throw in a couple of knives like this so that you can probably figure out whether or not this is going to be the kind of knife that works well for you. Okay, there we go with a few comparisons. What are my overall thoughts on the Wii Beacon? Great knife. I love to see these knives from Wii. There are a number of sort of slightly more budget-friendly offerings that Wii is doing. They're not cheap by any means, but they're just a little simple, a little more practical, and highly enjoyable because they still give you that high-end satisfaction of, something that's really well put together, has absolutely great materials, and frankly is very attractive. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I think this is a great looking knife. Even though it's a little bit simple, I don't think a knife to look good needs to have a whole lot of crazy colors and materials going on. I don't need Mokume or Mokutai or Damascus. I think a simple, effective cutting tool that is clean and sort of classy is highly appealing, and that's where I think this knife lands. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.